With great excitement, gratitude, wonder, exhilaration, we finally come to the study proper of the third stage. It's marvelous. We join as the congregation finishes praising the teaching of the second stage and requests the great Bodhisattva Diamond Matrix to give the teaching on the third. They say, "Go on to speak of the third of the most excellent stages. Let this superlative realm be told of as it is, linked with true knowledge and action. Tell of the path of the conduct of the victorious, the practice of charity and morality of the sages, patience, energy, tranquility, wisdom, skillfulness, supreme kindness, and compassion. Tell all, omitting naught." And Moon of Liberation said, "O Diamond Matrix, tell of the disposition of those who approach the third stage." Diamond Matrix said, "The bodhisattvas who have thoroughly purified their minds in the second stage come to the third stage. One enters the third stage by 10 conscious focusings of the mind. Purity, stability, disillusion, dispassion, non-regression, steadfastness, ardor, tirelessness, high-mindedness, and magnanimity. By consciously focusing the mind in these 10 ways, one enters the third stage. Furthermore, the bodhisattvas in this third stage examine the impermanence of all that is conditioned, as it truly is. And they examine the painfulness, impurity, unreliability, destructibility, instability, instantaneous arising and passing away, not coming to be previously, not reaching the future, and non-perdurance in the present of all that is conditioned. Seeing all conditioned things in this way, the bodhisattvas, seeing themselves without refuge, without protection, in grief, sadness, distress, bound by likes and dislikes, with much suffering, dejection, and turmoil, without resources, burned by the fires of lust, hatred, and delusion, filled with many diseases, cause their minds to be more and more liberated from all conditioned things and direct their mind towards enlightened knowledge. The bodhisattvas also recognize the inconceivability of enlightened knowledge and recognize its incomparability, its immeasurability, its difficulty of access, its independence, its freedom from afflictions, its freedom from distress, and how it arrives at the city of fearlessness and never comes back from it, and how it saves many people. Thus, observing the immeasurability of enlightened knowledge and observing how full of ills all conditioned states are, the bodhisattvas further develop compassion towards sentient beings. Yes. Incredible. The breadth, the power, the truth of this teaching. We brought forth the aspiration for true awakening in the first stage. We purified our lives, our actions in body, speech, and mind. In the second stage, and now we have prepared ourselves for the direct examination of truth in the third stage. This third stage is about meditation, about samadhi, about methods to enter blissful states of supreme honesty. No longer being caught in our suffering and deception, seeing things as they really are. And this begins by seeing the impermanence of all that is conditioned. All that arises passes away. Everything that comes together comes apart. None of it can be depended upon. It's quite common that we'll meditate, we'll enter a state of stability and peace, and as we enter that clarity, that peace, a feeling will arise. And the feeling says, you're in danger. You're in danger. You're not safe. And it hurts. It's painful. We don't like it. We want to get away from it. And perhaps, if we're skilled in the practice, then we apply a technique to it. And it breaks up and becomes, you might say, the greatest peace and joy we've felt in years. You might say that. And yet, then, within just a short time, that peace and that joy falls away. Why? Because everything conditioned, everything that arises, falls away. This is a real problem. That we can't trust anything that's conditioned. Of course, there are certain things that are more trustworthy than other things. Naturally, that's what we dealt with in the second stage. That's the point of the second stage. See that some conditioned things are more trustworthy than other conditioned things. Some people are more trustworthy than other people. Good people are more trustworthy than bad people. And yet, even though it's true that good people are more trustworthy than bad people, there's a kind of trustworthiness even in bad people, if you know that they're bad. It is strangely relieving to discover that someone is really a bad person. Because then you know. All right, this is a bad person, I can't trust them. And at least we can trust that. It's a strange experience to come to see that this is impermanent. Because on the one hand, it's absolutely terrifying and it's the experience that we've tried to avoid for our whole lives. But on the other hand, it's such a relief to finally just acknowledge it. That's the problem. I've been trusting that which is not trustworthy. That's why. That's why. It's a strange situation. This is a metaphor that's been used since ancient times. It's as if someone came to your house and they said, "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." And you say, "What?" And they said, "I'm your long-lost child." "You are?" "Yeah. I'm your long-lost child. We haven't seen each other for so long. I've been lost. I've been searching for you. And I finally found you. I'm so happy. Can I move in?" You say, "Well, yeah. I mean, good to see you too. What's your name?" And so they move in. And it's sort of fun. You didn't know you had a child. So great. Wow, I have a child. You get to play games with them. You get to take trips with them. You get to talk about all the adventures they were on while they were lost. You get to tell them about your life as it's proceeded in the time that they were lost. It's fantastic. And then you notice that some of your things go missing. Huh, that's weird. I wonder where I put that. So you go to your child and you say, "You know, I've noticed that some of my things are going missing. Would you investigate this problem?" "Sure, I'm on it. Thanks." They investigate and they investigate, come back. "I'm not sure. Not really sure what's happening to your stuff. I'll continue to look into it." "Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it." And then more things go missing. It's very strange. You go back to them. "You know, I'm missing a lot of important things, actually. Can you investigate even more?" "Sure, I'll investigate more." So they come back and they say, "It's your friends who are taking your things." "It is, really? Oh, that hurts so much." "Yeah, you shouldn't see them anymore." "Oh, that's terrible." "Oh, well, okay." So we don't see them anymore. But our things keep on going missing. It's very strange. So we go back. "Could you investigate more? My child, my trusted child. Could you try to figure out what's going on here?" Say, "Of course, no problem. I love you too." And our things keep on going missing. And there comes a day when we realize, wait a second, this is not my child. This is a thief who tricked me. And of course, at that moment, it's painful. It's painful that you lost your beloved child. Although I would like to note that you didn't, for your information. Remember that part? It's not your child. You didn't actually lose your child. Even though you might think you did, you didn't. So that's hard, to quote, lose your child, unquote. It's hard that you now have to kick them out because they don't really want to leave. And you lodge a complaint at the local office. You shouldn't make them leave. To give them, 2-month notice or something. But the worst part, beyond losing all your stuff, is the humiliation. Oh, you feel so stupid. Obviously, it wasn't your child. You never had a child. I mean, come on. Oh, no. That's the hard part. Oh, boy. This metaphor has been given to us for a long time. It's a very old metaphor. So what does it mean? What's the meaning of the metaphor? The metaphor has meaning. It's not without meaning. So this perception came up, knocked on the door one day, and it said, "Hi, I am yourself." I said, "Really? I didn't know I had a self." "Yeah, you do." "Oh, neat. Hi. Can I move in?" "Sure. Move on in. Take over." So they do. And then your life starts to fall apart. You lose your life. You lose the ability to fulfill your vow. You're not able to fulfill your purpose anymore. You're confused, suffering, and distress. You lose peace of mind. You lose satisfaction. You lose direction. You lose clarity. So what do? You go to yourself. Say, "Could you investigate?" "Sure, I'm on it." And so yourself investigates. Investigate this, investigate that, from a self-centered perspective, and things don't get better. And yourself starts telling you, you shouldn't spend time with those good, wise people anymore. You should stay away from them. Okay, I will. It's their fault, I'm sure, that my life has been falling apart. You shouldn't listen to the true teachings. Okay, that's a good point. You shouldn't do good things. Got it. That's the reason my life has been falling apart, because I've been doing all those compassionate acts. Right. Thanks a lot for helping, self. And then there comes the day when you realize that it was yourself, your self-centeredness, your self-conscious awareness, your fixation, your attachment, your clinging to self that was causing all of these problems. Well, that's pretty bad. Because you just lost yourself. You had to kick it out. Get out of here. So it's hard, because you had this nice self, and now you don't have a self. But wait, remember the metaphor? You never had a kid. Remember that part? The same way. You never had a self. So you didn't lose yourself. So that's good news. Don't get too distressed about this. It isn't like you had a self and then you didn't have a self. It's not like that. You just didn't have a self, but you were acting like you had a self, and so everything fell apart. But you didn't. It's complicated, I know. I know. It's really tricky. Really hard. You're taking care of your pink elephant in the backyard. Until one day you realize, wait, I never had a pink elephant in the backyard. I just lost my pink elephant in the backyard. No, you didn't. You did not lose your pink elephant in the backyard. You didn't have a pink elephant in the backyard. That's why you don't have a pink elephant in the backyard. Not because it died or ran away. But the worst part of it is this sense of humiliation. We feel so stupid. Oh no. All of those years wasted serving someone who could never be served because they could never be found. I was making all that food and delivering it to an empty room. Giving gifts, spending all of my money, losing my ability to be of true service in the world, to no purpose. This is rough. And yet, nonetheless, there's a kind of relief at that moment. There's a happiness. And my proof is that if you get to the point when you can see it clearly, you will always admit it. Yes? I mean, why do we care about the truth? Why? For some reason we do. For some reason we want to know. It's such a relief. Oh, okay then. All right. This is untrustworthy. This is unstable. This is impermanent. we admit it, we acknowledge it, and we feel humiliated because we thought that we had some permanent self that wasn't just a conditioned thing that arose and passed away, but was a real thing that had self-existence and was true and real, permanent and stable. We thought that, but then we realized we can't find that. We look for it everywhere and we can't find it. When we acknowledge that, there's a sense of deep relief. Even though it's a difficult moment, there's still a sense of deep relief. Experience that relief. We enter the third stage and we examine the impermanence of all that is conditioned as it truly is. We acknowledge, we examine things as they truly are. If you had two people, you know two different people, one of them has really solved a problem. One of them has really solved one problem, and the other has not really solved any problem. One has really solved one problem, and the other has not really solved all problems. Which one should you trust? I wish that we were better at answering this question. We're not very good at answering this question. One person has actually solved a problem. They spent their time actually solving a problem. The rest of their life is a mess. Another person has spent their time not really solving any problems, figuring out how to get by and look good without really resolving anything. In general, we trust the latter person, the second person, the one who looks good but hasn't actually done anything good. We just keep on trying to trust that which is not trustworthy. That's what this section is about. Facing that which is not trustworthy and treating it as if it's not trustworthy. But in this section, we go beyond even the second stage, in which we see that some people are more trustworthy than other people. Some actions are more trustworthy than other actions. Some knowledge is more trustworthy than other knowledge. Some things are more skillful than other things. Some qualities are more wholesome than other qualities. We see that clearly. That's what we work on in the second stage, and it's of the utmost importance that we spend time in the second stage in order to fully learn that. Don't skip over it. Everybody nowadays seems to want to skip over it. No, I don't want to learn about that. That's a big problem if you don't learn about that. You should learn about that. But eventually, perhaps you move beyond even that and enter the third stage, in which you realize that even good people aren't trustworthy. Why? Because they are impermanent. You can't really trust them. They have a prior commitment. Their own death, their own karma, their own nature. You can't say, set aside your nature so that I can count on you. No, their nature is impermanence, just like yours is. You can't trust you either. You're impermanent. Your body's impermanent, your mind's impermanent, your feelings are impermanent, your thoughts are impermanent, your assumptions are impermanent, your acquisitions are impermanent, your possessions are impermanent, your dreams are impermanent, your memories are impermanent, your identity is impermanent, your hopes are impermanent, your fears are impermanent. Your self is impermanent. Long time ago, 2,500 years ago, there was a young man named Siddhartha Gautama. He was a very interesting young man. You should learn about him. really quite an interesting guy. As far as I can tell, he's the most interesting. And the most influential, I'd say, in terms of positive influence of anyone who's ever lived. He lived in a palace, and one day he headed out on a chariot, out into the city of Kapilavastu. And he looked around, and he noticed a few things. He noticed that people get sick. He noticed that people get old, and he noticed that people die. He never noticed that before. You might say, is that really possible that someone could get to be the age of 29? Somebody could get into their late 20s and not notice that people die? And I'd say, absolutely, that's possible. Most people go through an entire lifetime without noticing that anyone dies. Even when their loved ones die, they don't notice that their loved ones die. Even when they're dying, they don't notice that they die. This is common, especially nowadays, when somebody dies who you love, and you still go to work that day, rather than wailing in grief and tearing your hair out for a week, which is what reasonable people do. But for us, it's true, but they had a good life, and we're done with it. This is called not knowing that people die. Which is the same thing as believing that since you have an MP3 file of Coldplay, you know Coldplay. It's not the same thing. A person is not an MP3 file. But he, when he was in his late 20s, he realized, people die. And then he had the next realization. But he wasn't sure if it was true, so he asked somebody. He asked Chana, his friend and charioteer. He said, but if people die, does that mean that I also die? Isn't it amazing that someone could be so honest, have such integrity as to ask that question? It's amazing. And his friend said, yes, it is certain that you also will die. And it was as if the whole world collapsed around him. He suddenly couldn't help but see the impermanence of all that is conditioned, the painfulness, the impurity, the unreliability, the destructibility, the instability, the instantaneous arising and passing away, the not coming to be previously, the not reaching the future, the non-perdurance in the present of all that is conditioned. He saw all conditioned things as painful, suffering. And he saw himself as without refuge, without protection, in grief, sadness, distress, bound by likes and dislikes, with much suffering, dejection and turmoil, without resources, burned by the fires of lust, hatred, and delusion, filled with many diseases. And he didn't know what to do. He had no idea what to do. He didn't have this third stage that tells you, cause your mind to be more and more liberated from all conditioned things and direct your mind toward enlightened knowledge. He didn't know that that's what you should do. He didn't know. There wasn't a Buddha to teach it yet. This is just before the Buddha arose in the world. There's no Buddha to teach this stuff, so he didn't know it. No one could tell him. So they went back to the palace, and he did just what so many of us do. He did exactly what so many of us do. He went to his wife. And oh, thank goodness for Yashodhara. I can trust her for sure. She's great. She's a wonderful person. And let's be clear, she was a wonderful person. She was fantastic. And they had a long relationship at this point. They'd been married from when they were 16. At this point, they were in their late 20s. So what, that's 13 years or so, 12, 13 years. But in fact, they had a much longer relationship than that. Very, very long. in Buddhism, when you say very long, it means very long. So, too long to reasonably put it into years. It would take too long in this talk. I don't have the time right now to talk about it in years, because I'd have to spend time looking up. I only know, what's the highest number I know? Quadrillion? What's above septillion, I guess, is higher than, what do I know more than that? Decadillion? Is that something? Googleplex? Yeah, Googleplex. So I'd have to say Googleplex of Googleplex again and again and again if we're going to put it in terms of years, because they'd been in relationship, trusting each other, taking care of each other, for a very long time. Much, much longer than the age of this universe, since the Big Bang. I mean, that's just a blink of an eye compared to how long the two of them had been together. They really knew each other well. There were wonderful stories about it. She was great. Really wonderful person. So he thought, I got it. I'll go to Yashodhara. Yes, she'll take care of me. And he looked into the bedroom. There she was, sleeping with their child, Rahula. A midday nap with the baby. And he looked at them and he realized the horrifying realization that changed the world. And he put it in this way. He said, it is inappropriate. It is unreasonable for me, subject to decay and death, to depend on that which is also subject to decay and death. It's not appropriate, it's not reasonable for me, subject to decay and death, to go for refuge to depend upon that which is also subject to decay and death, and she is subject to decay and death. She cannot save me from this because this is her nature. And at that moment, he turned away from the palace, from acquisition, from accumulation, from self-preservation, and left the palace, striving to find that which is trustworthy, that which is not subject to decay and death. And good news, he found it. And better news, he taught it. He even taught it to Yashodhara and Rahula. And both of them found it as well. Which is quite extraordinary, you know. People often get mad at the Buddha for leaving his son for those 6 years that he ran away. He was like a deadbeat dad, they say. This is ridiculous. Sorry to go on a bit of a tangent here, but this is ridiculous. My father went on business trips all the time. What, you're going to blame him for that? That's ridiculous. But he came back with, wisdom, money. That's good. But what did the Buddha come back with when he came back to Kapilavastu? He came back to the palace. He came back with something far more valuable than money. How many people have a child and they wish, but that my child would never suffer again? How many people actually succeed at that? Very few. The Buddha did. When Rahula was 19, he attained complete awakening and didn't suffer anymore. That's pretty good. That's a good business trip. Goodness gracious. You worried about Rahula? He was an arhat at the age of 19. That's not someone to worry about. Worry about yourself. Worry about the fire underneath your own feet. Rahula's doing fine. Rahula actually was quite an interesting monk, but we don't have time for that now. So, we try to depend on those things that are subject to decay and death. We try to depend on money, but that's impermanent. That's not trustworthy. We try to depend on relationships, but that's impermanent. That's untrustworthy. We try to depend on metrics. That's a big one. We believe in the modern age that if it can't be measured, it's not real. But if it can be measured, it is real. That's one of the main assumptions of the modern age. We want everything to be measurable. Metrics this, metrics that. Am I having an impact? Well, let's measure it. Metrics are impermanent and untrustworthy. How about feelings? Okay, let's pay attention to our feelings. Well, bad news. Your feelings are impermanent and untrustworthy. How about thoughts, though? It's okay. I've got thoughts. Nope. Impermanent, untrustworthy. How about assumptions? That's a good one. That's one that we really try to depend on. My assumptions. My unquestioned assumptions. Well, bad news. Those are untrustworthy. Nowadays, we really want to find something trustworthy. We keep on trying to find something. And yet, as we examine it, we see more and more that it's not. Even these metrics, numbers, there's a sense nowadays, this Pythagorean sense, that nature has the nature of number. It's an incredible assumption. It's this amazing religious view that numbers are somehow real. They come out of the heaven of numbers or something. And they come down to this world or something, and they control it or something. We're not really sure, but math is definitely true. There's that assumption. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the mathematician. How do you say his name? Girdle? Is that how you say it? Girdle? Very interesting person. Who had a very interesting proof. She proved mathematically. It's an ingenious proof. Really one of the great achievements of, well, I think, humankind. As long as you group together something like Buddhism into one achievement. You know? Mysticism, one. And then you can take your list and you've got Girdle's Incompleteness, Theorem, pretty high up that list. So he demonstrated, is anyone familiar with this? Yeah, it's really very interesting, the way he did it. So he demonstrated, he proved that mathematics, which I'm going to leave it at there. I know it's more, guys. I know, but for now, mathematics, this sort of model, this system of understanding things that's useful. It's a useful model. Okay, it's a useful model. It is incomplete or incorrect, or maybe both. Incomplete means it doesn't describe everything. It misses at least something, but maybe a lot of stuff. And it's it's incorrect, meaning it says things that aren't true, at least one thing, but maybe a lot of stuff. And the thing that's most interesting about it, you can spend a lot of time on this, it's very interesting, but I'm going to skip through that whole process because it's already 8:30, and get to the most interesting thing about it, which is that we don't know, we can't know, through that model, using that model, we cannot know which part is missed or wrong. So as far as we know, 2 plus 3 equals 5 is wrong. We don't know. It could be. Hard to say. We don't know which part. We don't know how much is missed. It could be a lot of stuff. Maybe a lot of stuff. It could be wrong about what? Something or a lot of stuff. But we don't know and we can't know. The more you look into, and he demonstrates this in a mathematical frame, the more you look at things, the more they just fall away. They just vanish. You thought you had it. You thought you had a grasp on it, and then you don't. You were really clear, and then you're not. Even about the things that we as a civilization trust the most. We try to gather knowledge to know more and more. And obviously, I think that that's a good idea. Okay? You know, I talk about Girdle's Incompleteness theorem. I talk about George Eliot. I talk about the Dai Toa Kyoe Ken. You know that term? Dai Toa Kyoe Ken. The Greater East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere. I talk about things like this because it's important to know things like this. Obviously, we should learn things. There's a famous exchange between the Zen master Nansen, one of the great Zen masters, and his illustrious student, Joshu, not yet enlightened. Well, he had an initial awakening, but given the level of awakening he eventually attained, people usually just ignore his incredibly deep initial awakening at the age of 17. We usually say, yeah, he wasn't enlightened yet when he trained with Nansen, because his eventual level of awakening was not easy to talk about. So while he was training with Nansen, Nansen taught him to know things is delusion. To not know is ignorance. What an incredible teaching. To know is delusion, to not know is ignorance. Wow. Where does that leave you? If you know something, you're deluded. If you don't know something, you're ignorant. It was in this exchange that Nansen gave the famous teaching, the Zen mind is the ordinary mind. The ordinary mind isn't about knowing or not knowing. It doesn't know and it doesn't not know. And it doesn't not know or not know. It's ordinary. You can go on and on putting not in front of stuff. That just makes it more extraordinary. Wow, you've really got this figured out. But this mind doesn't do that. It doesn't mean it doesn't know, but it doesn't mean it doesn't not know. It's ordinary. Capable of talking about George Eliot without knowing anything about George Eliot. Capable of talking about wisdom, love, and power without believing in wisdom, love, or power. Capable of completely giving our lives to the monastic academy for the preservation of life on earth without believing in the monastic academy for the preservation of life on earth. How do we find this? By throwing everything away. We throw it all out. We throw away everything in our minds. That our minds are simple. Jhana, meditation, contemplation, samadhi, is simple. It is simple. Why? Because we realize that whatever we're carrying in our minds isn't trustworthy. It's impermanent, it's non-self, it's suffering. When we realize that for ourselves, actually realize it directly, then automatically we look out upon the world with eyes of compassion. We commit. We see this morass, this quagmire, this wilderness, this dangerous land as it is. And we see ourselves and everyone stuck in it, without a refuge, without safety. And so we commit. We make the commitment. I will find that which is trustworthy. I will find that which is truly trustworthy, so that I can be trustworthy in the world. I will realize that which I can trust, so that I can be someone who others can trust. Each of us comes into this life with a question, with a purpose, with work to be done, with a duty, with a responsibility. It's our duty, it's our responsibility, it's also our honor, our privilege, that now, here, we have the opportunity to find that answer, to actually answer that question. At one point, I was with Harada Roshi in Seattle, where I was helping him to lead a retreat there, and it was at, Bastyr? Is there a university called Bastyr in Seattle? Does anyone know? Yes? You live right near Seattle. Bastyr. Well, some university, we were there. And the people were taking care of us. We were in a little section, and so they were cleaning parts of it, and I think they actually cooked for us at that retreat. And so he thought it'd be nice to meet everybody who he considered them part of the retreat. And so he wanted to meet them, so he brought them in, he gave them tea, the little matcha. He gave them each matcha. And was talking, and they didn't really know what to ask him. He's kind of, how shall we say, nebulous. He's a really, really interesting guy, It was funny, I heard someone talking about Sogenji, and they said, someone was telling other people about Sogenji. And they said, Sogenji's kind of a difficult place. The people are kind of weird. It's sometimes difficult. The schedule is difficult, hard to get along. But the Roshi is amazing. Being around him, it's like being with a Zen master or something. Isn't that a funny thing? Yeah, it is like being with a Zen master. That's true. It's exactly like being with his Zen master. He's a real Zen master. So they're sitting there getting tea from a real Zen master. Hard to know what to say. And so, because, you're with a real Zen master, what should you do? Obviously, you should ask the most important question in your life, but we don't think of that somehow. What should I say? I don't know. We don't have an ordinary mind, so we think up something to say so that we don't ask the most important question in your life, which is exactly the thing you should ask a Zen master. Anyway, hard to do that. So they just asked, are there many Buddhists in America? He's there in his robes, shaved head, he's pretty little guy. How tall is he? 5 feet tall maybe, right? 4'11" or something, this little guy. He grew up right after the war, totally malnourished. So, literally without enough food. And so, he laughed. And he said, I'm not sure. I haven't seen many. But the important thing isn't to be Buddhist. The important thing is to ask questions and get answers. That's well said. The important thing is to ask questions and get answers. We have questions, real questions, that need to be answered. We have the opportunity to actually ask those questions truly. We have the opportunity to actually find those answers truly. Until we do that, we cannot be at peace. We won't be at peace. We can want to be at peace. We can set things up so that we'll be at peace, and we will not be at peace. We'll be melancholy, we'll be lonely, we'll be confused, we'll be dissatisfied, we'll suffer. And beyond that, until we find those answers, until we find the real answers to our real questions, we cannot fully live in accord with compassionate service. Why? Because those questions are our priority. Until we answer those questions, we can't truly serve selflessly, because those questions matter to us more than other people. It doesn't mean we shouldn't serve others. We should. It's through serving others that we find those questions and those answers. But that service is compromised. It's our job to ask these questions and get the answers, so that we can honestly say, that we can truly say, this should be expected in our lives. We should be able to truly say, I have done what I was born to do. We should be able to say that. I did it. It is done. And then the rest of our lives open up as pure service to help others to be able to say the same. Consider two people. Please consider two people. The first has really solved one problem, has really answered one question. The other has not really solved all problems, has not really answered any of their questions. Consider these two people. One has asked a question with such determination and skill that they found the answer. And that's what they've done. Maybe the rest of their life is a mess. The other one makes a good show. They look good. They spent their time figuring out how to live without solving problems, without answering questions. Consider these two people, and consider, which one do you aspire to be?